We interrupt this record to bring you a special bulletin. The reports of a flying saucer hovering over the city have been confirmed.
Did you really go out with an alien? Uh-huh. What was it like? Real different.
Becoming Human, a Mork and Mindy podcast. Hey everybody, this is Paula Scheffner with episode 3, Mork Runs Away, which first aired on Thursday, September 28th, 1978. The IMDb synopsis is Mork runs away from home after he ruins Mindy's date. This episode was directed by Joel Zwick and written by April Kelly. As the episode begins, Mindy is cutting Mork's hair, and he reacts like she's torturing him. He says that on Orc they have Nagachomps, which are a small green creature that the Orcans put on their heads and let graze, and they're very vicious. He says that occasionally a maverick Nagachomp gets lost from the herd and runs down your neck, which is why they put traps in their shorts. He tells her the Orcan philosophy is if something works, don't fix it. He offers her some money for cutting his hair, and it turns out that he got $6 babysitting Eugene. She says he can keep the money. The haircut is on her, and of course he says that it's on him. The phone rings, and she answers it, and he does muffled replies, kind of like a kid brother. It turns out to be a man named Brad on the phone, and he's in law school. Mindy has Mork water himself, so he puts a watering can down his pants. After she hangs up, she says that she has a date. He mentions the date June 2nd, 1852, which I don't think had any significance, but it does show an awareness of the Western Earth calendar. She says she really used to like Brad and he's back in town. When she says they're going to dinner, Mork assumes that he's included in this. So then Mindy says that she and Mork have been seeing too much of each other lately, so he suggests covering one eye. She tells him that he should go out and meet more people. He says choose company and wheeze a crowd. She says that it would be good for his development, but he's not really sure where he would meet new people. Then we switch over to the music store, and Cora and Fred are doing an inventory of the record albums. She calls him Fredzo, which he doesn't like because he says it sounds like a detergent. There are 6 Meatloaf albums and 9 Bread albums, so Fred says that it sounds like a grocery list, so a little pop music pun there. Mindy comes in and gives her grandmother a kiss, and Grandma calls her darling. Then she calls her father the nicest, most wonderful father in the world, and he says he's suspicious. She gives him 2 tickets to a basketball game, and he'll have to take Mork. He says that's the nicest thing she's given him since the chicken pox.
Fredzo, it's only 11 o'clock. You're not usually a wiener before noon.
She says she needs Mork to get out of the house while she has a date, and Fred is glad that the date is with a human. He does detest basketball because of the dribbling. Mindy says she hasn't had a date since Mork moved in. I'm not sure how much time has passed between episode 2 and episode 3. It felt like the first 2 episodes were back to back. Obviously, a little bit of time has passed. Mork has presumably met Eugene's mother, possibly both parents, since he's babysitting him, and enough time has passed that more than one guy has asked Mindy out, or has not asked her out, since she hasn't had a date in a while. She says that every time the phone rings, she hopes it's heavy breathing, like she wants an obscene phone call, and Fred says he'll pretend he didn't hear that.
Well, if I can't date other men, I guess I'll just have to settle down with Mork and have cute little green babies that drink their formula with their finger.
Free throw, one-on-one, dunk shot. Now go.
Then we go to the next scene where we see Brad Jackson, who is played by James David Hinton. Mindy is wearing a light blue dress, and Brad is in a suit and tie. They're drinking red wine after dinner. I don't know if they went out to a restaurant and then came back to her place, or if they ordered in, or if she cooked for him. She asks him why he never asked her out when they were in high school, and he says it was because he was a jerk. Mindy, if you recall, is 21. And so I'm guessing that Brad might be a year or two older if he's already in law school. They kiss. He says that he wishes he had kept in touch with her because she's a wonderful girl, and she agrees. They kiss for a longer time, and of course they're interrupted by Mork returning. He's dribbling like he's playing basketball, and Mindy makes quick introductions. Mork offers a nanu-nanu handshake. Brad says certainly, but he puts his hands in his pockets like he's not sure what to make of this. Brad asks if Mork is the first name or the last name, and Mork says yes. Mork asks if Brad enjoyed having food with Mindy, and Brad says yes, and Mork says he enjoys it too. So Mindy says everybody enjoys having food with Mindy. Mork sits between them on the couch, so he's very much blocking them. And he gives a very funny description of the basketball game. He tells how he danced to the national anthem. He passed a man some coffee by throwing it, and Fred caught it with his pants. Then Fred danced. Then Fred and Mork went to the restroom where Mork didn't get any rest. He had a terrible seat and he couldn't see the game. When they went back, a woman asked him to hold her seat, and then we see Mork holding his hands as if he would be holding the woman's bottom, and that's when they had to leave. And this is all delivered in a very deadpan way, and it's one of these moments on this episode in particular where I'm just amazed the rest of the cast was not cracking up. Brad asks Mork if he's a friend of a family, and Mork nonchalantly says that he lives here.
Oh, Brad, see, it's not what you think.
Mindy, he lives here with you and you go out with other men?
Oh, yeah, but you see, Mork, Brad and I aren't quite finished yet.
Oh, I see. You're still hungry.
Mork says that he'll whip up his special dessert, and he tells Mindy, "For you, lemon, mama." So a little bit of French. And he takes off his jacket and he tells it to stay. Brad wants to leave, and then Mork tells him to stay and says that we'd like to get to know you better. So he's very much butting into the date. Mindy tries to explain again to Brad about the living situation, and Brad says he doesn't know what Mindy's idea of a relationship is, but Brad is not a swinger. Mindy says she isn't either. Mork thinks this relates to baseball, and so he refers to the Broncos. And the Broncos were and are a Denver football team. Mindy wants to see Brad again, and he says they'll get together real soon, but he leaves quickly. Mork has prepared a bologna sundae, which is green with something tan on top. I can't really see the bologna in it, but maybe it's underneath, or it could be pureed. I don't know. They play sad music as Mindy looks sad. Mork points out that her eyes are leaking, and he knows this means something has hurt her because he's starting to understand earthling emotions.
Brad did something. That slime monger. I'll follow him to the ends of the universe. I'll vaporize his entrails.
Mindy says that Brad misunderstood Mindy and Mork's relationship, and that makes her feel sad. She says that ever since Mork moved in, guys stopped asking her out, which is what she had told her father earlier.
He thinks that you and I are...
Lovelings.
Yeah.
Mindy says that either guys don't understand or they just don't believe her, and she's feeling lonely. Mork says that it's because he's staying there. She says it's not his fault, and she says that it was her idea for him to move in. And again, technically, Mork suggested it first on the pilot, but it did only become a reality in the previous episode, which was, of course, called Mork Moves In. She exits to her bedroom, and now Mork's eyes leak, which surprises him. So a suggestion that he is starting to feel earthling emotions himself. The next scene is the next morning, and Mindy is in her robe. She yells to Mork and offers pancakes, waffles, and gladiolas, which is a little joke because he does eat flowers. She calls him a lazy orkin, and then she finds a note attached to the pull-down ladder that goes up to the attic, which we established in the previous episode is where he's now living and sleeping. Which she could have told Brad, I suppose, but maybe Brad would have felt like the attic was still too close.
Mindy,
I know you are sad because people think you and I are lovelings. I don't want you to be sad anymore, so I'm going away. If people from Ork knew how to love, I'm sure I would love you. But I don't even understand what love is. Love, Mork.
Then we go back to the music store for the next scene, and Eugene is cleaning counters to earn money to buy his mom's birthday present. And he calls Cora Grandma Hudson. So there's a sense that they know each other. They're not super close, but they're definitely friends. He says that he's going to get his mother a catcher's mitt, and Cora says this will go with the shin guards he got her last year. So Cora and Eugene have known each other at least a year. She exits into that still unseen back area of the music store, asking Eugene to call her if a customer comes in, and that is the last we see of Cora in the episode, but they needed to get her off stage, I guess, for the next part. Mork enters in a dark trench coat and red sunglasses that look kind of new wave. I was surprised by that. They look more early 80s than late 70s. He's carrying a small silver suitcase, and he does Guess Who with Eugene, who guesses Stevie Wonder, which I would think was a reference to glasses, but of course he can't see them because Mork's hands are over his eyes.
Say, Plasma, what it is.
Mork asks Eugene where he would go on vacation, and Eugene says either France or Switzerland, but it would depend on how much money you have, and he tells Mork you can't get too far on $6. And I just want to note that Mork speaks a little bit of Russian and Italian when he's planning to go to France. Even though he spoke French when he said Le Monde, forgive my accent, in the previous scene. Mork uses the word bummer. Eugene can see that something's bothering Mork, and it's written all over his face. So Mork says, Shazbat, I've broken out in words. He tells Eugene not to tell Mindy where Mork is going, and he says he's been a lot of trouble to Mindy. Eugene suggests Mork go to a flop house, which Mork says is perfect for a flop like him. Eugene says there are some places on Mission Street, but they're awfully seedy. But Mork says he loves horticulture. Fred enters, so Mork hides, and Eugene covers for him. Fred sees the suitcase and wants to open it. Mork knocks down some albums that are hanging on the wall and points his finger at them from across the room to create a diversion. Fred and Eugene go to investigate, and then Mork sneaks out. Then we go to a completely new set after an exterior of a seedy neighborhood. This is the Friends of Venus headquarters, and it's got graffiti on the walls, including Martians or non-believers. I don't know if Martians don't believe in Venusians or what the issue is there. Exidor enters, and he's wearing sandwich boards that say that the end is near and Venus or bust. He has on a long white robe, and his hair is kind of monkish. This is basically the Exidor costume. I believe there's an outfit or two much later, like season 3 or 4, that he wears, but this is what we would see of Exidor because, yes, he would be a recurring character, and he is in fact listed as special guest star Robert Donner. Exidor yells at two of his invisible friends. They are nameless at the moment. I believe one of them was named Pepe, but we'll find out on his future appearances. There's a sign on the desk that says Exidor Space Admiral, so although we have not yet heard his name, we can figure out what his name is.
I tell you, the men from Venus are coming down to take us to their planet!
He says that there's room for 1,000 people on the escape ship, and so far they've lined up 3. And we can see on the door there's a chalkboard saying how many are booked for passage, and there's a large number 3 on there. He sits down and takes off his hip boots, which he says make his thighs sweat. Mork comes in and says that he saw the sign, and he wondered if there was anyone he knew, because he does know people from Venus. He says one guy was kind of cute if you're into short and fuzzy.
His name is...
Gesundheit!
No, that's his name. See, he's got a wife and a litter, and their names are and. I hate to be the child stuck with a name like...
Exidor is the first person that Mork has met that, at least for the moment, takes him at his word, does not question him, does not consider him eccentric or a yo-yo because of his own eccentricity, just accepts Mork. He calls Mork a true believer. He asks Mork if Mork believes in people from outer space, and Mork replies, Shazbot, nanu nanu. Exidor says, precisely. Exidor introduces himself and invites Mork to join him, so Mork stands extremely close. Exidor explains that he wants Mork to join his group. Mork says that he's looking for a flip house to flap in, and Exidor corrects him. Exidor says that Mork can stay here and work with them. Mork says he's got a job and a place to flip out at all at once. And he says Mindy will be pleased, and then he repeats her name and says heavy sigh. So again, that stage direction thing he does. Then we go back to the music store, and Mindy tells her father that Mork has run away, and she asks for Fred's help. Fred calls her honey, but says maybe this is for the best. Mindy disagrees because Mork is like a child with no concept of trouble or danger. So there's a sense here of her already feeling maternal towards him. She cries in her father's arms, and he again calls her honey, and he says he'll help. So this is like in the pilot, where he felt very hostile towards Mork, but when the chips were down and Mindy wanted him to help, he was a character witness at the sanity hearing, and he will now help Mindy to find Mork. She says that she's been looking all morning, so I'm not sure how much time has passed. Fred reconstructs what happened earlier, including with a suitcase, and Eugene says, I don't know nothing, which in itself is a confession. So Fred says that they've uncovered a clue. Then it's back to the Friends of Venus headquarters. The door sign now has the number 4 on it. Exidor hands Mork a pamphlet, which includes his philosophy for the Friends of Venus. He wants Mork to study and memorize it. Mork does this in a second. They'll do a little bit of role play. Exidor will pretend to be a non-believer, and Mork will try to convert him. He says, hey, non-believer, and Exidor says that's a good start, but Mork needs more power in his voice and more conviction. And then Mork goes into a televangelist mode, which is one of those Robin Williams set pieces that were still very, very fresh at the time. I would assume at the time of this filming, no Mork and Mindy episodes had actually aired, so for the studio audience, this must have been a revelation, no pun intended.
Do you realize that the Venusians are coming down to Earth? But they're not coming here on Veterans Day, not on April Fool's Day, but on Labor Day. Baby, baby.
Mork also says that he's making a list and checking it twice, which is like Santa.
Now, friend, now you can either stay down here in your Driscoll drug-infested inferno, or come up to Venus and have your very own Venusian condominium with hot and cold running champagne and underwater dancing. You must apply now.
Understandably, the studio audience is knocked out, and this is still wonderful. Because at that time, I don't think there were a ton of televangelist characters on TV. It was still pretty fresh, I mean, as parodies. Note that he said disco drug-infested inferno, so rooting it very much in the late 70s. Exidor is also impressed, and he says that was beautiful, and he asks one of his invisible friends why he can't be more like Mork. Now, Exidor wants to hear Mork's experiences with Venusians on Earth, but Mork met Venusians on Venus. He's been to all the planets in, quote-unquote, your solar system. When Exidor names off planets, Mork says that Pluto is a Mickey Mouse planet, which would become ironic decades later when Pluto would become an X planet. He explains to Exidor about Venusians not actually coming to the Earth to blow it up. their technology isn't advanced enough. Their highest invention so far is the garbage can, which they only invented in order to have something to knock over. Exidor calls this blasphemy, and he erases the number 4 and puts a 3 again. He calls Mork crazy, and he exits. Mork is so eccentric that even somebody as wacko as Exidor just can't deal with this. So you can imagine somebody as bland and normal as Brad Jackson must have really been weirded out, although he's very polite about it. After the applause for Exidor fades, Mindy enters, and she says she knew when she saw the Friends of Venus sign that Mork would be there. She wants him to come home. He thinks that she feels sorry for him, but she says she feels sorry for herself. Without him there, she had an apartment, but it was only home when someone was there that she cared about. She apologizes to him, and she says she was blaming him for guys not asking her out. He is aware, though, that he was cramping her style when Brad was there, and he says he made a real Krimluck out of himself. And she explains that she's a woman, and sometimes a woman just needs to be held. And she says it wouldn't necessarily have had to have been by Brad. And Mork, even though she's hugged him a couple times already, doesn't know what hugs are. Maybe he didn't connect the word hug with the action. So she explains what hugs are, and they hug closely for a while, much longer than the hugs in the first 2 episodes.
Soft. I can understand how this keeps you going. It's got me going, and I don't even know what it is.
Then they let go, and he gets his suitcase. We go to the tag with the message to Orson. Mork is humming and just kind of in a very sweet, soft mood. He does the Indian love call, which I believe was Jeanette MacDonald and Nelson Eddy. He sings a little bit of that at Orson, and Orson does not like Mork singing. He says it sounds like someone stepped on a Frankel's tail. Mork's lesson this week is he learned how to make a human happy by giving a hug. Orson wonders if this is wrestling, but Mork says it's different. Orson says it's amazing what pleases primitive tribes. He'll never understand them.
It was good for me, too.
Mork!
Mork calls Orson Your Immenseness, and he signs off. So there are a lot of things going on with both Mork and Mindy and them together in this episode. So I'll just briefly cover the other characters. This is not a big Fred episode compared to the first 2 episodes. He still disapproves of Mindy living with Mork. He definitely does not want to see Mindy end up in a romantic relationship and eventual marriage and parenthood with Mork, but we'll see what happens in season 4. There's a little bit of the Fred and Cora bickering, but not as much as in previous episodes. It would have been great to have seen Fred and Mork at the basketball game, but the way Mork describes it is very funny and we can visualize it. We get a little bit of Fred interacting with Eugene, not a lot. There is the suggestion of the Cora and Eugene friendship, which is sweet. Mostly the 3 of them are there to flesh out the episode a little bit, but it is mostly about Mork and Mindy and how they interact with each other, and then also these 2 other people that entered their lives. We don't get much of a backstory on Brad other than he went to high school with Mindy, like I said, probably a year or 2 ahead of her. He's now in law school. He's good looking and polite, has a bit of a sense of humor, old-fashioned. Would have been a nice date for Mindy, definitely compared to Bill, the Jeep stealer, but he is bland, and Mindy isn't in love with him or anything. He was just a possibility. he was a guy that she might have wanted to be held by. He's one of those characters we get on sitcoms sometimes that are really there to throw into relief the main relationships, and we're not really supposed to be that invested in Mindy/Brad. On the other hand, Exidor is a very significant new character as a friend for Mork. Although they don't part on good terms, we definitely have not seen the last of Exidor. I remember from the time that I was always very happy when there was an Exidor episode. I do feel some of the later episodes with Exidor are weaker, but that has more to do with some of the flaws in the writing at that time. But his material here is very good. He is very vivid. I think the way that Robert Donner and Robin Williams play off of each other is solid. As I said, I don't know, there must be a lot of bloopers of just them cracking up, but on screen what we see is them completely deadpan and serious and very into it and very much in the zone with each other, playing the reality of this unreal situation. We would gradually get more details about Exidor and his life, both real and imaginary, and sometimes it wasn't always clear which was which. This is a good, solid introduction. It's believable within the context of Mork and Mindy that there was someone like this in Boulder and Mork would gravitate towards him, and that Exidor would be impressed by Mork until disillusioned. There will be, I think, a true friendship. To the extent that Exidor is capable of true friendship, I think that there will be that. But this is a nice base for that. We don't get to see Exidor interact with the other characters. That will happen later. Mindy will not be fond of Exidor for understandable reasons, but we'll get there. They do a nice job of the headquarters/flophouse set. It is very different than the music store and Mindy's living room, which are already feeling like familiar, friendly places. We're already stepping a little bit outside of that. Yes, we got the sanity hearing judges' chambers on the pilot, but it was a set that we weren't really supposed to think about. It was just perfunctory. Mindy had suggested that Mork go out and meet new people to develop as a person, and in a sense that happens. What this experience of roughly 24 hours, it teaches both Mork and Mindy that they want to be together. She learns again, as she did in episode 2, that she would miss him, and Mork very clearly misses Mindy and is happy to come home as long as she doesn't see him as a nuisance, a crimlock. At the same time, there is a certain poignancy, which I think runs even into season 4, that Mindy cannot have a normal life while sharing her life with Mork. Her time with him is not normal. Even things like a haircut are nothing like what she has grown up to expect. He is an obstacle of her having a normal relationship with another man, and she's having to adjust to that. There will be times that she's fine with this and times that she's not. We get a little bit of the Three's Company, oh, we're living together, but we're just living together and the date doesn't understand kind of thing. It's complicated here because there is that sort of innocence to Mork. I'm not really sure what he means by lovelings. It might mean lovers, or it might mean something else. He says he doesn't know what love is, but if he could feel love, he would love Mindy. And then he signs off love because he knows that that's how you sign off some letters. And so again, Mork is exposed to feelings he can't yet process, from love to sadness, very major emotions. But he is starting to open up more, and of course Orson doesn't like that. I think that this is a very Mork and Mindy episode. It has the basic elements, especially for early in season 1. It is, again, not the ultimate Mork and Mindy episode, but on a 1 to 4 egg scale, it's a 3.5, like the pilot. And it's a very funny episode. It's got some bittersweet moments, very poignant. It brings up some emotional issues that will have to be dealt with, not just in this episode, but throughout the series. As far as the heart rating, which reflects the viability of a Mork and Mindy relationship, it's a little bit complicated here because of Mork not fully knowing what a romantic relationship is. I mean, he's still learning the importance of hugs, which could be platonic, but we're starting to blur the lines a little bit more. Mindy does not see Mork as a romantic prospect at this point. He is more like a child. She jokes about the idea of marrying him and having children with him. She cannot fathom that 3 years from now, that would be her life. I don't think I can go too high on the heart scale. Again, I think there's the potential, there is the groundwork, but there is so much further to go. The previous episode teased us with some very mild sexual tension and things like him wanting to share a bed with her and her saying he has a lot to learn and then he hoped to learn things by sleeping with her. There's not that. You could argue that their connection is still platonic, but I also think that her saying that she didn't have a home until he came along is really significant, whether or not you want to see it as romantic. Pam Dauber would later star in the show My Sister Sam, which I believe started in 1988, so about 10 years later. And it, as you may guess from the title, was about her character living with her teenage sister. And there's a line in the theme song, "Anywhere is home, as long as there's someone there to share it." And obviously that is a sibling bond, but I think it applies here as well, that her apartment is a home because he's there to share it. I'm going to go with 1 heart. The bond can be seen in a completely platonic way, although again he notices her softness, but it's not as anti-ship as obviously episode 0 was. 3.5 eggs, 1 heart. This has been Paula Scheffner with episode 3, Mork Runs Away. Nanu Nanu.